Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. Missouri kind of transitioning to a new phase of its season with the playoff out of its grasp, but still looking for things to play for. And as we'll discuss today, still are things to play for, even if it's not a national championship or a SEC championship. So excited to talk about that all today as this team gets ready to play Mississippi State. Joey Van Summer joined by Michael Stamps here. Talk about this Missouri team. Michael, just what are your thoughts about Missouri after kind of reacting to this loss to Texas A&M in the wake of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in all honesty, they're. I mean, absolutely. I'm not going to go out and say that there was no chance that Missouri was going to beat Texas A&M. I think that'd be unfair to Missouri, their coaches and players. But I think this is, where we stand now, probably the most realistic, given the scenario of where we kind of expected things to be. Again, given quarterback situation, just what this team has gone through, what they look like now, and going against Texas A&M. I mean, doesn't really. I think that was probably going to be an uphill battle anyway, regardless of who was healthy and who wasn't. Texas A&M is heck of a football team. Kind of like hard to be upset about losing to a team that good, even though in a lot of ways Missouri's season is it's not done, but the big goal is no longer in reach. So I mean, I guess in that aspect it sucks, and I know we're going to talk about this here in a second, but kind of maybe a similar feel to what Missouri went through last season, where playoff goals were not realistic anymore, but still can hit that high win mark, get a couple of big ones. I mean, I think there's a lot more at the table in terms of development this year that maybe there wasn't last year, where if Matt Zollers, I mean, assuming he is going to, I don't see why he wouldn't be the starter for the next 3 games, unless Bo Pabula magically comes back, which he probably won't and probably shouldn't. But, assuming Matt Zollers is the, starter for the next 3 games, that's really good development for him for the future. Brett Norfleet's health is kind of in question right now. He's questionable as we speak. So maybe more reps for Jude James. I think there's just a lot of development that can happen over these next 3 games for the rest of the season. So I think that's something, that's kind of worth keeping an eye on. But yeah, I mean, you could still go win, 9 games in the regular season and get a 10th with a bowl game win. So, might have to bite my tongue, but that's a successful season, right? I mean, I know fans obviously are still waiting for that playoff berth, and I guess I get that. If you look at the last 2 seasons, you look at the Cotton Bowl season in 23 and last year, that's 2 10 wins in a row, and you can get 3. I understand why fans are ready for a playoff berth. I guess technically that is the next logical step, right? But the team has to develop. A lot of things have to go right. I mean, you really have to be perfect in a lot of senses. And obviously you can lose a game or 2. But outside of that, you have to be at your best. That wasn't the case for Missouri. And again, some things didn't go their way this year, especially in the quarterback situation. I think we're going to look back on that. And again, I'm not saying Bo Pabula leads Missouri to a win over Vanderbilt, over Texas A&M, but that does change. It does change things. I think there's no denying that. So again, roundabout way of saying that 10 games still within reach. I understand why, Missouri fans might be angry, frustrated, annoyed, any of the above, for not, being able to make the playoff. But again, I see why people think that is the next logical step. But there should absolutely be zero shame at all in having the chance to have 3 10-win seasons in a row. So, again, that's very much still attainable. And I know Oklahoma going to be a tough one. So don't want to pencil in 10 wins by any means, but very much still within reach. And that would be very successful.
Right. And look, Missouri isn't going to hang a banner if they get 10 wins, especially if one of them, the one to get them to that point is what the Mayo Bowl or, wherever they end up. I mean, if they're able to beat Oklahoma, I mean, that changes a lot, in my opinion, as far as, well, honestly, I mean, at this point, there's really only about 4 or 5 bowls are realistically in play for, no matter what happens in these last few games. But that win over, a win over Oklahoma would be a big feather in the cap for this season. And again, like you said, Michael, I absolutely understand. Um, and I think this is what was at the root of a lot of people's reaction to the Texas A&M loss, is that, that game against Texas A&M really just showed and was just another, kind of comma, and this happened, as far as Missouri not being able to get over this hump, not being able to get over that margin. And Eli Drinkwitz talked about it on Tiger Talk, of that margin from good to great. And I thought it was, good to hear his honesty on this, and self-awareness of where this program is still at, of not, clearly not being in that tier yet of the top tier of SEC teams that is, can contend for a playoff spot until the final weeks, be confident going into the postseason. Now, and it's honestly hard to say how close or far they are from that, really. But when you have these games like this, when they have to play big games, and they're, I mean, this Texas A&M one, and then the Texas A&M one last year, and the Alabama game last year, those three weren't close. But the South Carolina game last year, the Vanderbilt game this year, the Alabama game this year, they're just a few plays away. But it's kind of like Auburn and Hugh Freeze of just being close, and how much longer can you hold on to that? And I understand that. I think ultimately, like you said, with this Texas A&M loss, there's, it's silly to overreact to this loss specifically. I think this was more so, like you said, Michael, a more realistic showing of what this Missouri team was this season. But also, yeah, I mean, that, that's also not really accurate to say, because they have a freshman quarterback in there who was making his first career start. And I think if you would have told me at the start of the season that Missouri by week 11 was going to be down both of the guys that were competing for the starting quarterback job and their starting kicker, it's like, yeah, that's going to be a tough road. Now, what I think is fair to be frustrated over, no matter what those situations are, is these things that popped up in the Texas A&M game, Alabama and Vanderbilt game as well, where it's stuff where you don't need a awesome cornerback from the transfer portal. Like, you don't need the top ranked transfer portal class to be able to make the wrong call on a punt where you end up getting faked on. You don't need, the special teams issues have been really frustrating. And, talk about that a little bit later. But these systematic things, you don't need some super expensive investment at wherever to, make the decision going in halftime to not be that aggressive on offense when you consider the situation. I mean, all that say, I mean, Missouri has invested a lot, but we still don't know exactly where that investment stacks up as far as the roster with the rest of the country. So I get the frustration with those parts. I don't want to call them deep rooted or systematic, but it's frustrating when, like, in order to pull off an upset, when, I mean, let's face it. I mean, Texas A&M has more talented roster than Missouri going into that game. If you're going to pull off an upset in that game, you can't have those things happen. You can't make those decisions, especially when they're repetitive things, especially like on the special teams. We talked about it after the game in a reaction, but it's been going on for too many years at this point, of costly moments. I asked Drinkwitz on Tuesday how he evaluates special teams as a whole, and he asked about a specific unit. I was like, well, all of it. And really, I mean, really, it's not one specific unit. It's more so like these big gaffes that keep popping up. So again, at this point with special teams, what is there to really talk about as far as, what needs to be fixed in the rest of the season, because it's really just those big gaps. But all this to say, I think everybody's frustration in the Texas A&M game was reaction to everything that has happened so far this year. Don't overreact entirely to it. Missouri still has a hump to get over, and Eli Drinkwitz recognizes that. We hit on it a little bit as far as what would a 10-win season still mean for this team. And I think the main thing is just, again, a sign of the progress of where they're at. And again, I don't think that should be lost in this season. And again, with the reaction to the Texas A&M loss, don't lose sight of that. I think anything beyond, as it relates to Eli Drinkwitz, anything beyond, it's frustrating to lose these big games and still not be in the tier. I think anything beyond that is just silly. And Coach Drinkwitz had said on Tiger Talk the other day that Coach texted him and said, a lot of coaches would trade for the spot you're in right now, regardless. And so, I mean, Mike, what's just your thoughts on that perspective as far as still the progress of where's Missouri is at, even if it's not exactly where they want to be in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, I think Drinkwitz's quote about, I don't remember exactly what he said, but there's 120 something teams in college football and only 12 make it to the playoff. Like, that encapsulates where Missouri is at perfectly. If you look at the teams competing for the playoff, for the most part, it's household names that have been around for the last 10 years. I mean, down the line, Ohio State, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Notre Dame, like Texas, Miami. These are teams who have consistently been good. And obviously you're seeing some of these teams rise up the ranks a little bit. Like Indiana is, kind of one of those. I don't want to hype them up too much in case they end up losing, but one of those teams that look like they could be around for the future. But I think, as far as the SEC goes, like Missouri, I don't want to say they've been compared to Ole Miss, but I think they've been in similar situations over the last few years in terms of you kind of get a eccentric new head coach and trying, kind of in that second tier, and maybe Tennessee's in that category as well, where you're kind of in that second to third tier of the SEC where, kind of like you said, you're a game or two away from, or a couple plays away from breaking through. I think Ole Miss was kind of in that spot last year where there was a chance for a while where they had a chance to break through and make the playoff, and they lost a couple bad ones. I want to say they lost one to Kentucky. It was either Kentucky or Florida last year. That was just kind of like, how the heck did they lose that football game? Missouri hasn't had that this year. I mean, all their losses are very much within reason, but still kind of the same thing where they're just a couple plays away. And I think Ole Miss, when you look at Ole Miss this year, not to draw too many comparisons, but that's a pretty complete roster. Their quarterback situation is the best it's been in recent memory, which is, kind of a slam dunk. That guy Chambliss wasn't supposed to be that good. And look what, that they had a lot and something they didn't know they had. So I don't want to call them lucky, but maybe they're a little bit lucky because I don't think he was supposed to be that good. So, I think their roster in general is just a little bit more complete. They've been in a lot of those situations, and I would imagine, no, I'm not watching Ole Miss every week over the last 4 years, but I would imagine there's a lot of stuff they've learned from. So I really just think for Missouri, it takes learning from some of these close losses. And, I guess that could go into roster construction as well in terms of what they need. If there are common themes throughout some of these losses over the last couple of years, which there certainly are, go back, evaluate, and watch these games they've lost that could have changed the course of their season, like the South Carolina game last year, or Vanderbilt this year, or Alabama this year. Go back, watch those games. What were some of those areas where positionally and skill set wise, maybe things fell through the cracks. You mentioned special teams. That's absolutely going to be an area where I think there's evaluation. And again, Blake Craig being out is just, that's not something you prepare for. I can't really think of many times where I've seen a kicker tearing it was torn ACL. I can't really remember at all the last time that happened. So that's kind of a anomaly of an injury. That's not something you prepare for. I guess the Connor Wesselman's been slightly inconsistent. He did not have a good game against Texas A&M at all. You wrote about that in your review. It was uh, just bad, really, really, really bad. Those are things that do change the game. And again, I know the quarterback situation against A&M makes things so much different, but there are definitely things you can look back at some of these games and say we were missing this. We need to get this. I would imagine. Again, I've watched a little bit of Ole Miss for the last couple of years, but I'm not a super fan. I'm not watching every game, but I would imagine there are things that they reflect on and are able to go back and change. I know defensively maybe haven't been super great over the last couple of years, and their defense is really good this year. So just kind of, I think it's just a reflection process, really, Missouri is in a way knocking on the door. They're really close. They're, like you said, a couple plays away. Alabama was a winnable football game. Vanderbilt was a winnable football game. I'm not going to go out and say that about Texas A&M, just situation considered, but those were games where they had chances to win somehow, believe it or not. They're close. They're really close, I think. You could make the same argument about last year with South Carolina. If Missouri beats South Carolina, that season's different. So again, you just got to go back. I think there's a lot of reflecting that needs to happen about how, and I'm not saying they're not doing that, but I think Ole Miss kind of has the recipe because, again, I think the two teams were in similar spots there for a while. And I guess there's still time for Ole Miss to screw it up. But they've seemingly cracked the code. So I think that's kind of an interesting pattern to follow.
All right. I'll say this before we get into our Mississippi State talk. I think a little bit of the elephant in the room as we head into, again, as I was talking about, transitioning to a new part of the season for Missouri, where it's going to be easy to focus on a lot of other things with this program and have these big picture conversations. And with the coaching carousel, I would just say, like, don't waste your time. Looking into every little rumor, report, or betting odds, but everything not everything has to be a question, but basically just until Eli Drinkwitz gets an extension, like, the door has to be open, basically, for not the questions, but basically just, and not the wild speculation either, but just the idea that we have no idea what Missouri's next season looks like. That's the words I'm looking for.
I just want to throw into this. I wish I knew we were going to talk about this because I 1000% would have saved this tweet. But someone mentioned that the concept of stocking betting odds for a head coaching search is just the dumbest possible thing on the planet Earth. Someone looked back over the last 4 years over betting favorites for certain head coaching jobs. I think one of them, it was USC before. Why am I blanking on his name? Lincoln Riley. Sorry. Yeah. LSU before Brian Kelly. And there were maybe Notre Dame before Marcus Freeman or something like that. Maybe it was the Florida job, but like this one I had pulled up before Billy Napier was hired. The betting favorite for the Florida job was Scott Frost at one point. So, I would be lying if I said I haven't seen the betting odd lists, and I think they all seem semi-realistic, but it just don't read into it. And if there was a universe where Eli Drinkwitz leaves, I don't think Missouri fans know. There's no crystal ball. We couldn't even begin to speculate how that process would look. The job it's not an open job, so it doesn't really matter. So I agree with you, Joey. I think until at least let the season be done before we look ahead and talk about head coaching openings. I don't think some of these other teams who already have jobs open are really going to be bringing in guys at least till the end of the regular season. So, at least right now, just let the season ride out. I think all things considered for Missouri, there are still, at the very minimum, from the fan standpoint, 3 potentially entertaining football games to watch. So that should be the focus instead of who is going to be where.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think again, the large point I was trying to make is just that, you know, it's not worth it. I see a lot of people. I mean, pretty much every time Eli Drinkwitz says something about Missouri as a program, people looking into, oh, is he trying to say or is he trying to leave? I, I mean, one, nobody on the outside has any idea what he thinks as far as that, what is going on behind closed doors, or as that. I think the only thing you have to pay attention to again is when or if does that extension happen, if at all, and then going from there. And I also think no matter what the obviously no matter what the coaching carousel is going to affect Mizzou, not only because one of their schools that they are set to play every year on the SEC schedule, Arkansas, is going to have a new one, and I mean that's kind of the surface level of how it's going to affect them. But then also, just the dominoes that are going to fall from in the transfer portal for the fact that LSU, Penn State, and Florida, three of the biggest brands, three of the top jobs in the country are open. It's going to be very interesting, very exciting, and then obviously all the dominoes that fall from the coaches that replace them there. So a lot to watch this offseason for sure.
Yeah, recruiting could be a nightmare or really
Yeah.
exciting as well. I'm not saying I know anything because I don't, but signing day's approaching here pretty soon, and I mean it's going to be up in the air for those teams that don't have head coaches. But uh, depending on how things change before signing day, that's could keep a lot of people on their toes.
Right. Absolutely. All right, let's take a look at this Mississippi State team. Look, they've gone close with some SEC teams. They lost 21-41 to Georgia last year. And hey, what can you do there? But they lost by 3 to Tennessee earlier in the season. Took Texas to overtime, 38-45 in Texas. They're dealing with a little interesting of a situation at quarterback. Blake Shapen was injured, but seems like he's going to be able to play. He was listed as probable on the SEC availability report, so he should be good to go. Missouri also planned a game plan for freshman quarterback Kamario Taylor if he ends up being the one that plays. That's according to Khalil Jacobs, who said they have a plan for both of them. Defense, heavy pressure defense. Also, I think it's worth mentioning, Michael, you hit it a little bit on the top as far as the availability report from Missouri, but Brett Norfleet is questionable again. I believe he started out the week against Texas A&M as questionable as well. Drinkwitz said during the bye week 2 weeks ago that Norfleet was day-to-day. So it would still sound like sooner rather than later. And then the new addition to the injury report being Landon Kitchen, who is out. Considering the fact that he was a surprise injury and immediately put to out, probably says something. He's been getting more in the rotate. I mean, he's been pretty involved in the situation, pretty much been in that second rotation at edge rusher since the middle of the season. So, I mean, really, you were looking at there. I mean, obviously, Darius Smith has been in that backup rotation as well, and then it's really just more playing time for Nate Johnson. Probably lose a little bit in run defense with Landon out, but obviously not something that's going to completely throw off the plans defensively. Michael, what are your thoughts on this Mississippi State team?
Before I said that, we were talking about Nate Johnson earlier this week. I secretly hope they give him some run because he was a good player last year. One more thing before Mississippi State, Missouri needs Brett Norfleet. Matt Zollers really needs Brett Norfleet. I don't want to delve too much into this because it's going to be a longer topic of conversation, but last week there was so many deep balls from Zollers, and it was just really inefficient. Seeing Zollers and the Missouri offense work the middle of the field and some of those small stuff with Coleman and Norfleet, if he's healthy, would help Zollers astronomically. So I think Missouri really needs Brett Norfleet this week because Drew James, again, could be a really good player. I just don't think you're not getting that level of size and physicality in the hands that you have with Norfleet. So that could be huge. Mississippi State quarterback situation is really interesting. Blake Shapen has a pretty solid arm on him. When healthy, I know last year he struggled with injuries, and I believe he had a season ender, which is why Missouri faced Michael Van Buren in Starkville, and that didn't really go that well for them. So I guess a semi-similar situation, but I don't really know the extent of Shapen's injury. You're right. Khalil Jacobs said they have to game plan for both, and that's kind of interesting. That's pretty, two very different stylistic quarterbacks. I mean, Taylor is almost a pure runner to a certain extent, and he's a big dude as well. He's 6'4", 230. So that is, that's pretty big for a quarterback, I guess. And I know they do a lot of design stuff for him. He's come in multiple times this season, kind of just periodically and situationally, to do a lot of design runs, and he can break off some big ones, but he's a powerful runner as well. So that's, I mean, not necessarily an area for concern, because I feel like Missouri's managed some of these. I mean, basically every quarterback they played has been a mobile one this season, and hasn't really been an issue if they can stop Diego Pavia on the ground. I'd like to think they can stop Kamario Taylor. So might make it a little interesting if they're rotating guys. I think that could be something that throws the Missouri defense off. But Shapen, a little bit more of a pocket passer, so he has a really upgraded number of receiving threats this year. Nothing against Kevin Coleman or Mario Craver, but I think there's a wider range of them this year with Brennan Thompson, Anthony Evans, and Aiden Williams. Just a lot of different skill set and versatility there. Brennan Thompson comes over from Oklahoma. Anthony Evans comes over from Georgia. Evans is a little bit bigger. Thompson a little smaller but speedier. So good range of guys there. I know Khalil Jacobs talked a little bit about Fluff Bothwell, which is incredible name. I mean, how can you not get excited about that? But he's really been their leading rusher all season. They do kind of have a dual thing going on a little bit with Devon Booth, who I believe was there last year as well. So that's another guy to keep an eye on. I mean, they're both just kind of hard-nosed, powerful runners. They're not exactly different players, but they're both pretty solid. Khalil Jacobs said that he didn't overlap with Bothwell. I think that's correct. Bothwell is a sophomore or junior, but still a good player there. So I'm honestly not all that familiar with their offensive line. I know it's not one of the best in the conference. I mean, only so many of these offensive lines could be the best in the conference. So might be a little more room for success there in the pass rushing department from guys like Zion Young, Damon Wilson, and that sort of thing. I think, again, these are talented guys, but I don't want to overblow it at all. This is not the most talented offense that the Missouri defense excuse me, is going to face all season. So something worth noting there. On the defensive side of the ball, just a lot of really solid guys. Jerron Manning is a safety they brought in. He's their leading tackler. They have a lot of different guys who can get after quarterback, which I think is pretty interesting. Nick Mitchell is more of a true linebacker. Malik Sia is a transfer from Texas A&M who can do it a little bit. Brandon Jennings, Deontay Anderson, Trevion Williams. Really, just a lot of guys who are capable of doing that. I think the most notable of anybody on this defense is Kelly Jones, slowly kind of emerging as one of the better cornerbacks in the entire country, with 24 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 11 pass deflections. That's this season. I know that number is one of the best in the country. Only a sophomore, so impressive stuff there, but really good player. Really good size as well. 6'4", 195 pounds, slowly emerged as one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out. They're going to be down Isaac Smith, which is a big deal. That's one of the better safeties in the country. So they'll be down that guy right there. They will have Brian Lanier and Jerron Manning back there, but still going to be a big loss. So it's a deep team. It's not going to be the strongest defense Missouri plays all season, but they're going to throw a lot of looks at the Missouri offense. I think from this point on, for the rest of the season, from Texas A&M and on, teams are really going to throw whatever they have. They're going to throw the whole kitchen sink at the Missouri offensive line and Matt Zollers, just to make him uncomfortable. Clearly, he was not fully comfortable with the amount of pressure he was facing against Texas A&M. And I know that's a little bit of a different situation, but regardless, these teams are going to throw everything they have at the Missouri offensive line. And Matt Zollers, I would expect Mississippi State to do the same. That being said, Would not be surprised if Zollers is able to find a little bit more success passing the ball. Like I said earlier, would like to see him zero in a little bit more on the middle of the field. I don't think Mississippi State's linebackers are necessarily the best in coverage, but their DBs are solid. So going to be something to keep an eye on there. Again, not the best defense that Missouri is going to face all season long, but certainly enough of a test to put Zollers under pressure and create some challenges.
So that's going to do it for us here today on the All Things Mizzou podcast. Appreciate you tuning in.